Now, all of this is just backstory. I haven't really touched the story at all, so I'm going to try and summarize this as best as I can, in part, because it's epic. I don't even know where to start. It's about war, as I mentioned. This is the Highland States. I'm sorry, not the Highland States. The Highlander, or the Highlanders, whatever it is that they properly are called, is a nation run by the Blight family. Very militaristic, very much engaged in the sort of activity that would usually give itself towards expanding within a country sense. So they are the antagonists. They are the ones who are trying to expand their territory. On the other side, you have the city-states, and the city-states are chaotic and involved, and there's a lot of politics going on there. All of them have their own little agendas. If you don't know what a city-state means, it's an old term from Italy, I believe, is where we first started using that. The Roman city-states, the Greek city-states. It means a city that has enough power to be considered more than a city. It is effectively a nation, even though its territory only consists of a city and some of the surrounding area, as opposed to a nation which consists of many cities, like the Highland. But the city-states are relatively aligned with each other. They have I wouldn't call it a senate, but a group that meets together and decides on policies, and it's just one big mess of politics. Very well done, though. The two sides have been in opposition. Are in opposition throughout the course of the game. The Highlanders are the bad guys, if I didn't make that clear there, by virtue of the fact that you're on the other side. It's complicated, and I love that fact because of the fact that I love complicated stories where the villain isn't a clear-cut villain. That's also ironic when considering Suikoden 2, but again, I'll get to him later. The Jowie ends up marrying the sister of the current head of the Highlands, and when that current head is removed for reasons I'll get into later, he ends up becoming the head of the Highlands and starts pushing forward with his plan. And it's mentioned a lot, and this theme is touched on a lot, that, again, neither side is evil, neither side is wrong, neither side is good, and neither side is correct. This is just people, and I love that. Both sides are people, and the people are just doing what the people are trying to do. You really get that feel that everyone's caught in this. Everyone's caught in the fact that there is no good solution, there is no way out, and this war is inevitable, and nobody really wants to fight it, but both sides feel like they have to. Like the Cold War, something I could talk about at length because it's always been a big deal to me. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Oh my god, they're after me! The Cold War, if it ever escalated to real war, would be exactly what we have here going on with the Highlands and the city-states, because neither side really had any great desire to be at war, to be killing each other, to be losing their sons and losing their daughters and having leaving behind orphans. It was not something anybody wanted except for you-know-who. And it was all made worse by the Beast Rune. This is why I say the Beast Rune, in my opinion, is what really started this whole thing, because the Beast Rune is a primal rune. It is chaotic, obviously, and its entire purpose is to just sow chaos, to make everything like we were animals, just ripping and tearing and shredding each other. And its final form is this multi-headed wolf of awesome looking. And it's actually the last boss of the game is the Beast Rune itself, if that tells you anything. So, but I still feel like I haven't really covered the story at all because there's just so much to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Let's talk about the gameplay. That's a good next play to go. In Suikoden 2, as with all the Suikodens, at least of the ones I've played, because I don't actually think I've ever played 4, and I still haven't played Tyrxis, so I'm not sure on that one. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. You have 3 forms of combat, right? You have your standard, completely normal RPG battle with your party versus them, right? That's right here in the middle. You have the strategic battles. I would probably liken that most unto a board game, if you can think about it like that. You know, you've got the grid here, and you've got your units, and there's a degree of rock, paper, scissors going on, because cavalry are good against archers, and archers are good against infantry. I don't remember exactly how it works, but you get the idea. And that's actually pretty enjoyable and pretty fun and pretty difficult, at least in my opinion. And that all the major battles in the game occur like that. You're actually moving units and armies and all that, and then you have the little battle. And then there's the final form, which is the duel, which again, a little bit rock, paper, scissors. But I like the duel, and I wish more games would use this concept, and here's why. A lot of games have had a thing where there's a big moment, there's an impacting moment, there's a scene that should be happening, and it means something, and what they'll do is they'll have a standard battle for this scene, and it'll just be you versus him. FF4, for example, Cecil versus Golbez, or some of the staged battles again in FF4, where you have Golbez and Fusoya facing up against Zemus. Things like that, right? What Suikoden does, what Suikoden 2 especially does, is for those moments that mean something, that have dramatic impact, that really matter to the story, it's a duel. It's a completely different combat thing. You go into this whole other little area, and it's just you, usually the main character, I believe, sometimes it's not, and the other person, and, you block, or you attack, or you lunge, whatnot, and it's a one-on-one fight. There's not much to say gameplay-wise there, but because of the way it emphasizes the story aspect, I really like it, and I really like how they pulled that off. The RPG battles I don't have anything to say about, to be quite honest with you. If you've ever played a standard Eastern RPG, you've played this one as far as the gameplay. You level, you have your runes, you set them up, you equip stuff. None of this is bad. I'm just saying, I don't really have anything to say about it. It was good, and that's the end. They did the isometric thing, sort of, like Breath of Fire. If you've ever played those games, that's the kind of combat we're talking about here. The 108 stars. I think this is the last point I'll go before I go into my real big speech here. The 108 stars of Destiny. It's from a Chinese work of writ. It's from a Chinese work. There's a whole thing about it, the Chinese stars and the 108 of them, and how they have to do with Destiny. The 108 stars of Destiny, and I don't know as much about that as I'd like to, but either way, within the games, the 108 stars are always significant. You see, each star is actually a person, and recruiting all 108 people requires a walkthrough. I'll say that right out. You want a walkthrough for doing that, because you can miss some permanently, and unless you do things perfectly in a certain way, you won't recruit some people. But it also involves... from a gameplay perspective, it has to do with beefing up your castle, which is the other thing I want to talk about in relation to that. Breath of Fire 2, the Breath of Fire series in general, Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm trying to think of any other examples off the top of my head. I can't come up with any. There's a few games that have this concept of a town or a castle or a home or whatever that you beef up. You customize, you advance, either you add people or you go do quests in order to get specific people who will then sell you some of the best stuff, or maybe they'll just add some flavor or whatever. I like that, and I've always liked that because I'm a customization whore. I'll just be honest. I love being able to put my stamp on a game and set up something the way I want it to, and I've always loved the castle element. And in my opinion, Suikoden 2 did it best. You don't get the castle till fairly far on in the game, and setting it up is one of the major components of the latter half of the game, and recruiting all 108 people. But I liked it, and I like the fact that you can name it and just do your thing. You can name your army too, by the way. The Nethrazim, and all that fun stuff. I really like these elements. I unfortunately don't have as much to say as I'd like to about them, but it was really enjoyable, and I've tried to explain why, because the customization aspect, it really appealed to me. Now, the 108 stars within a lore concept have to do with... I'm trying to think of how best to summarize that. You see, in gameplay terms, if you get 108 stars, you get a different ending, the best ending. Now, it's worth noting that in lore terms, that's the ending that actually happens. But in several cases, this actually rewrites history or allows certain things to work in different ways, so that, in lore terms, having all 108 stars of Destiny combined with any given event is what allows time to flow properly. I think that's the way I want to put it. Like, for example, in Suikoden 2, spoiler alert, your best friend, the deleted clone, Joey, dies unless you do things in a certain way and get all 108 stars, and your sister, who, is obviously someone very close to you, and you spend most of the game trying to take care of her, and at some point she leaves and dies, is alive and reveals herself to you at the end, and you and Joey and her actually have a happy ending together, as opposed to just about any other endings, which are not happy, as you might imagine from a setting like this and a game that has to do with war. Not a lot to be done about that.